October 14th, 1899, Volume 2, Hope, Peacemaking Mother. This morning I felt a little disturbed, and all annihilated within myself. I saw myself as if the Lord wanted to drive me away from Him. Oh God, what a harrowing pain this is. While I was in such a state, blessed Jesus came, with a little rope in His hand, and pounding on my heart 3 times, He told me, "Peace, peace, peace. Don't you know that the kingdom of hope is a kingdom of peace, and that the right of this hope is justice? You, when you see that my justice arms itself against the people, enter into the kingdom of hope, and investing yourself with the most powerful qualities she possesses, rise up to my throne, and do as much as you can to disarm the armed arm. And you will do this with the most eloquent, the most tender, the most compassionate voices, with the most compelling reasons, with the most heated prayers, which hope herself will dictate to you. But when you see that hope herself is about to support certain rights of justice which are absolutely necessary, and wanting to give them up would be wanting to give affront to herself, which cannot be, then conform to me and surrender to justice. And I, terrified more than ever for having to surrender to justice, said to Him, "Oh Lord, how can I do this? It seems impossible to me. The mere thought that you have to chastise people I cannot tolerate, because they are your images. Were they at least creatures that did not belong to you? Yet this is nothing. But what tortures me the most is having to see you, I would almost say, being struck by yourself, slapped, scourged, and grieved by yourself, because the chastisements will pour upon your own members, not upon others, and therefore you yourself will suffer. Tell me, my sole and only good, how will my heart be able to bear seeing you suffer, struck by your very self? If creatures make you suffer, they are always creatures, and it is more tolerable. But this is so hard that I cannot swallow it. Therefore I cannot conform to you, nor can I surrender." And he, moved to pity and all touched by my words, assuming an afflicted and benign appearance, told me, "My daughter, you are right that I will be struck in my own members, so much so that in hearing you speak, I feel all my interior moved to compassion and mercy, and I feel my heart split with tenderness. But believe me, the chastisements are necessary, and if you do not want to see me struck a little bit now, you will see me struck more terribly later, because they will offend me more. Would this not grieve you more? Therefore conform to me, otherwise you will force me not to tell you anything any more, so as not to see you grieved. And with this, you would deny me the relief I receive in conversing with you. Ah, yes, you would reduce me to silence, with no one with whom to pour my pains out. Who can say how embittered I was left at his words? And Jesus, almost wanting to distract me from my affliction, resumed his speech about hope, telling me, "My daughter, do not be disturbed. Hope is peace. And just as I, in the very act in which I make justice, remain in the most perfect peace, you too, by immersing yourself in hope, must remain at peace. The soul who is at peace, by wanting to afflict herself, becomes disturbed or lose trust, would run into the misfortune of one who, though possessing millions upon millions of coins, and even being queen of various kingdoms, keeps fantasizing and lamenting, saying, "What shall I live on? How shall I clothe myself? Ah, I am dying of starvation. I am so unhappy. I will be reduced to the meagerest misery, and I will end up dying." And while she says this, she cries, sighs, and spends her days in sadness and squalor, immersed in the greatest melancholy. But this is not all. The worst thing about her is that if she sees her treasures, if she walks within her properties, instead of rejoicing, she afflicts herself more, thinking of her nearing end. And if she sees food, she does not want to touch it to sustain herself. And if anyone tries to persuade her by letting her touch her riches with her own hands, showing her that it cannot be, that she will be reduced to the meagerest misery, she is not convinced. She remains dazed, and cries even more over her sad lot. Now, what would people say about her? That she is crazy, that it shows that she has no reason, that she has lost her brain. The reason is clear. It cannot be otherwise. Yet it can happen that she may run into the misfortune over which she keeps fantasizing. But in what way? By going out of her kingdoms, abandoning all of her riches, and going into foreign lands in the midst of barbarian people, where no one will deign to give her a crumb of bread. Here is how the fantasy has become reality. What used to be false is now true. But who has been the cause of it? Who should be blamed for a change of state so sad? Her perfidious and obstinate will. Such is precisely the soul who is in possession of hope. Her wanting to become disturbed or discouraged is already the greatest madness. And oh Lord, how can a soul be always at peace, living in hope? And if the soul commits a sin, how can she be at peace? And Jesus, in the act of sinning, the soul already goes out of the kingdom of hope, because sin and hope cannot be together. Every common sense believes that each one is obliged to respect, preserve, and cultivate what belongs to him. Who is that man who goes into his properties and burns what he possesses? Who does not keep his possessions jealously? I believe no one. Now the soul who lives in hope, by sinning, already offends hope. And if it were in her power, she would burn up all the goods that hope possesses. Then she would find herself in the misfortune of that lady who, abandoning her goods, goes to live in foreign lands. In the same way, by sin, going out of this peacemaking mother, Hope, so tender and compassionate, who reaches the point of nourishing her with her own flesh, which is Jesus in the sacrament, the primary object of our hope, the soul goes to live in the midst of barbarian people, which are the demons, who, denying her the slightest refreshment, nourish her with nothing but poison, which is sin. Yet what does this peacemaking mother do? Does she perhaps remain indifferent while the soul moves away from her? Ah, no. She cries, she prays, she calls her with the most tender and most moving voices. she goes after her, and when she leads her back into her kingdom, only then is she content. My sweet Jesus continues telling me, the nature of hope is peace, and what she is by nature, the soul who lives in the bosom of this peacemaking mother acquires by grace. And in the very act of speaking these words, by means of an intellectual light, blessed Jesus makes me see, through the simile of a mother, what this hope has done for man. Oh, what a moving and most tender scene! If all could see it, even the hardest hearts would cry with contrition, and all would grow so fond of her that it would become impossible for them to detach, even for one moment, from her maternal knees. I will now try to say what I comprehend and what I can. Man used to live in chains, slave of the devil, condemned to eternal death, without the hope of being able to live again to eternal life. Everything was lost, and his destiny had gone to ruin. This mother lived in heaven, united with the Father and the Holy Spirit, blissful and happy with them. But it seemed she was not content. She wanted her children, her dear images, the most beautiful work that came out of her hands, to be around her. Now, while she was in heaven, her eyes were intent on man, who was lost on earth. She is all occupied with how to save these beloved children of hers, and in seeing that these children can in no way satisfy the divinity, even at the cost of any sacrifice, because they are greatly inferior to it, what does this compassionate mother do? She sees that there is no other means to save these children than to give her own life to save theirs, taking their pains and miseries upon herself, and doing everything that they were supposed to do for themselves. So what does she think of doing? This loving mother presents herself before divine justice with tears in her eyes, with the most tender voices, with the most compelling reasons which her magnanimous heart dictates to her, and says, I ask for grace for my lost children. I don't have the heart to see them separated from me. I want to save them at any cost, and even though I see that there is no other way but to lay down my life, I want to do it as long as they may reacquire their own. What do you want from them? Reparation? I repair for them. Glory, honor? I glorify and honor you for them. Thanksgiving? I thank you for them. Everything you want from them, I give you, provided that I may have them with me, reigning. The divinity is moved in seeing the tears and the love of this compassionate mother, and persuaded by her compelling reasons, it feels inclined to love these children. The divine persons cry together over their misfortune, and conclude in accord that they accept the sacrifice of the life of this mother, being fully satisfied, in order to reacquire these children. As soon as the decree is signed, immediately she descends from heaven and comes upon earth, and laying down her royal garments which she had in heaven, she clothes herself with human miseries, as if she were the most miserable slave, and she lives in the most extreme poverty, in the most unheard of sufferings, amid the scorns most unbearable to the human nature. She does nothing but cry and intercede for her beloved children. But that which is most stupefying, both about this mother and about these children, is that while she loves these children so much, instead of receiving with open arms this mother who is coming to save them, they do the opposite. No one wants to receive her or recognize her. On the contrary, they let her go wandering. They despise her and begin to plot how to kill this mother so tender, who loves them so passionately. What will such a tender mother do in seeing herself requited so badly by her ungrateful children? Will she stop? Ah, no. On the contrary, she becomes more ignited with love for them, and she runs from one point to another to gather them and place them on her lap. Oh, how she toils, how she struggles, to the point of dripping sweat, not only of water, but also of blood. She gives herself not a moment of respite. She is always in act to operate their salvation. She provides for all their needs. She remedies all their evils, past, present, and future. In sum, there is nothing which she does not order and dispose for their good. But what do these children do? Have they perhaps repented of their ingratitude in receiving her? Have they changed their thoughts in favor of this mother? Ah, no, they scowl at her. They dishonor her with the vilest calumnies. They procure her opprobrium, scorns, and confusions. They beat her with every kind of scourges, reducing all of her to a wound, and they finish by making her die the most infamous death that can be found, in the midst of cruel spasms and pains. But what does this mother do in the midst of so many pains? Will she perhaps hate these children, so unruly and arrogant? Ah, no, never. It is then that she loves them more passionately than ever, offering her pains for their salvation, and breathing her last with a word of peace and of forgiveness. Oh, my beautiful mother! Oh, dear Hope! How admirable you are! I love you. Oh, please, keep me always on your lap, and I will be the happiest in the world. While I am determined to stop speaking about hope, a voice resounds everywhere around me, saying, "Hope contains all good, both present and future, and one who lives on her lap and is raised on her knees, whatever he wants, obtains." What does the soul want? Glory? Honor? Hope will give her the greatest honor and glory on earth among all people, and in heaven she will glorify her eternally. Maybe she wants riches. Oh, this Mother Hope is extremely rich, and what is more, by giving her goods to her children, her riches are not the least diminished. Moreover, these riches are not fleeting and passing, but eternal. Does she want pleasures, contentments? Ah, yes, this hope contains within herself all possible pleasures and tastes which can be found in heaven and on earth, so much so that no one will ever be able to equal her, and one who nourishes herself from her breast, enjoys them to her fill, and oh, how happy and content is she! Does she want to be learned and wise? This Mother Hope contains the most sublime sciences within herself. Even more, she is the master of all masters, and one who lets herself be taught by her learns the science of true sanctity. In sum, Hope provides us with everything, in such a way that if one is weak, she gives him strength. If another is stained, Hope instituted the sacraments, and in them she prepared the bath for his sins. If one is hungry or thirsty, this compassionate mother gives us the most beautiful, the most delicious food, which is her most delicate flesh, and as drink, her most precious blood. What else can this peacemaking Mother Hope do? And who else is similar to her? She alone has reconciled heaven and earth. Hope has united faith and charity with herself, and has formed that indissoluble link between human and divine nature. But who is this Mother? Who is this Hope? She is Jesus Christ, who operated our redemption and formed the hope of man astray. October 14th, 1900, Volume 4. The Dangerous Scourge of the Middle Class. Only innocence snatches God's mercy and mitigates his just indignation. This morning I felt so dazed that I could not understand myself, nor was I able to go in search of my highest good as I usually do. Every now and then he would move within my interior and would make himself seen. And completely embracing me and compassionating me, he would say to me, "Poor daughter, you are right that you cannot be without me. How could you live without your beloved?" And I, stirred by his words, said, my beloved, what a hard martyrdom life is, because of the intervals in which I am forced to be without you. You yourself are saying that I am right, but then you leave me." He hid furtively, as if he did not want me to hear what he was saying to me, and I was left in my dazedness again, unable to say anything else. When he saw me dazed again, he came out and said, "You are all my contentment. In your heart I find true rest, and resting in it, I experience the dearest delights." And I, stirring myself again, said, "For me also, you are all my contentment, so much so that all other things are nothing but bitternesses for me." And since he withdrew again, I remained halfway through my words, more dazed than before. And this is how the morning went on. It seemed he felt like joking a little bit. After this, I felt myself outside of myself. I saw unknown persons approaching, dressed as middle-class folk. On seeing them, the people were all horrified and screamed with fright and distress, especially the children. And they said, "If these set upon us, it is over for us." And they added, "Let the young girls hide. Poor youths, if they are caught in the hands of these." So turning to the Lord, I said, "Pity, mercy, move this scourge away, so dangerous for miserable humanity. Let the tears of innocence move you to compassion." And he, "My daughter, Only because of innocence do I have regard for others. It alone snatches my mercy and mitigates my just indignation. October 14th, 1901, Volume 4. Jesus shows himself like a flash and makes her comprehend something about the divine attributes. Blessed Jesus comes in passing, almost like a flash, and in that flash he releases from his interior, now a special distinction of one of his attributes, now another. How many things he makes me comprehend in that flash! But once the flash has withdrawn, my mind remains in the dark, and is unable to adapt itself to repeating what it has comprehended in that flash of light. More so, since it is about things that touch on the divinity, and the human tongue struggles in trying to repeat them, and the more it tries, the more mute it remains. Even more, in these things it is always a newborn little girl. But obedience wants me to try to say the little I can, and here it is. It seemed to me that God contains all goods within himself, in such a way that, finding all goods which God contains within him, one does not need to go anywhere else to see the vastness of his boundaries. No, but he alone is enough to find everything that is his. Now, in one flash, he showed a special distinction of his beauty. But who can say how beautiful he is? I can only say that all the angelic and human beauties, the beauties of the variety of flowers and fruits, the splendid azure and starry heavens, which seem to enchant us and speak to us of a supreme beauty as we look at them, compared to his beauty, are shadows, or a breath that God has sent forth from his beauty, which he contains within himself. That is, they are little drops of dew compared to the immense waters of the sea. I move on, for my mind begins to get lost. In another flash, he showed a special distinction of the attribute of charity. But how can I, miserable one, open my mouth about this attribute thrice holy, which is the font from which all other attributes derive? I will only say what I understood with regard to the human nature. So I understood that as God creates us, this attribute of charity pours into us and fills us completely of itself, in such a way that if the soul corresponded, being filled with the breath of the charity of God, her very nature should be transmuted into charity toward God. But as the soul keeps diffusing herself in the love of creatures, or of pleasures, or of interests, or of any other thing, that divine breath keeps going out of the soul. And if the soul arrives at diffusing herself in everything, she becomes empty of divine charity. But since the soul cannot enter into heaven if she is not a complex of most pure charity, fully divine, if the soul is saved, this breath, which she received in being created, she will acquire again by dint of fire in the purging flames. And only when she comes to the point of overflowing with it, then will she go out. So who knows what an extremely long stop she has to make in that expiatory place? Now, if the creatures should be so, what must God be? I believe I am speaking much nonsense, but I am not surprised, because I am not at all some learned one. I am always an ignorant one, and if there is anything of truth in these writings, it is not mine, but God's, while I remain always the little ignorant one that I am. October 14th, 1906, Volume 7, Self-Esteem Poisons Grace. The Purgatory of a Soul for Having Neglected Communion. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself with baby Jesus, and he seemed to say to a priest, "Self-esteem poisons grace in you and in others. In fact, since by your office you must administer grace, if souls detect that what you say and do, you do in order to be esteemed, and it can easily be detected when this poison is present, grace does not enter alone, but together with the poison that you have. So instead of rising again to life, they find death." Then he added, "It is necessary that you strip yourself of everything in order for you to be filled with the All, which is God. And by having the All within you, you will give the All to all of those who will come to you. And in giving the All to others, you will find everything at your disposal, in such a way that no one will be able to deny you anything, not even esteem. Even more, from human you will have it divine, which befits the All who dwells in you." After this, I saw a soul from purgatory, who, upon seeing us, hid and shunned us, and the blushing she felt was such that she was as though crushed. I was surprised that instead of running to the baby, she would run away. Jesus disappeared, and I drew near her asking the reason for it. She was so ashamed that she could not utter a word, but as I forced her, she told me. Just justice of God, for having sealed upon my forehead confusion and such fear of his presence that I am forced to shun him. I act against my own will, because while I am consumed with yearning for him, another pain inundates me, and I shun him. O God, to see him and to shun him, these are mortal and unutterable pains. However, I have deserved these pains, distinct from those of other souls, because in conducting a devout life, many times I made abuse by not receiving communion because of trifles, temptations, coldnesses, fears, and sometimes even in order to be able to bring reasons to my confessor and let him hear that I was not receiving communion. Souls hold all this as nothing, but God judges it most severely, giving it pains which surpass the other pains, because these are defects more directed to love. In addition to all this, Jesus Christ in the most blessed sacrament burns with love and with the desire to give himself to souls. He feels himself dying continuously with love, and when the soul can draw near him to receive it but does not, or even more, she remains there indifferent with many useless pretexts. The affront and the displeasure he receives are such that he feels restless, burning, and cannot give vent to his flames. He feels as though suffocated by his own love, finding no one with whom to share it, and almost gone mad, he keeps repeating, "The excesses of my love are neglected, even more they are forgotten. Even the ones who call themselves my spouses have no yearning to receive me, and to let me pour myself out with them at least. Ah, in nothing am I requited. Oh, 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 I am not loved. I am not loved. And so, to have me purged of this defect, the Lord has made me share in the pain which he suffers when souls do not receive him. It is a pain, it is a sorrow, it is a fire, such that it can be said that the very fire of purgatory compared to it is nothing. After this I found myself inside myself, all stupefied, thinking about the pain of that soul, while here with us, neglecting communion is really held as nothing. October 14th, 1909, Volume 9, Proofs that it is Jesus that goes to Luisa. Continuing in my usual state, I seemed to find myself with a baby in my arms, and from one they became 3, and I felt all immersed in them. Now in the morning, when the confessor came, he asked me whether Jesus had come, and I told him what is written above, without adding anything else. The confessor told me, "Didn't they tell you anything? Didn't you understand anything?" And I cannot say it well. And he continued, "The whole Trinity was here, and you can say nothing? You have become more stupid. It shows that these are dreams." And I, "Yes, it is true that they are dreams." He continued to say other things, and while the confessor was speaking, I felt clasped so very tightly by the arms of Jesus, to the point of losing consciousness. And Jesus told me, "Who is it that wants to molest my daughter?" And I, "Father is right. Since I am unable to say anything, they have no sign that it is Jesus Christ that comes to me." And Jesus continued, "I act with you as the sea would with a person who would go and dive into the depth of the sea. I plunge all of you into my being, in such a way that all of your senses remain inundated, and in such a way that if you want to speak of my immensity, depth, and height, you can only say that it was so great that your sight was lost. If you want to speak of my delights, of my qualities, you can say that there are such and so many, that as you went about opening your mouth to count them, you were drowned in them. And so with all the rest. Besides, what is this? I have given no sign that it was I. False. Who has kept you in bed for 22 years without breaking you, and with full calm and patience? Has it perhaps been their virtue, or my virtue? And what about the tests they made during the first years of this state of yours, or making you remain immobile for 10, 7, or 18 days without taking any of the necessary nourishments? Were they perhaps the ones who maintained you, or was it I? Then, since Father had called me, I returned into myself. Then, as the confessor celebrated Holy Mass, I received communion, and Jesus came back. I lamented to Jesus that he was not coming as before, that the great love he had for me seemed to have turned into coldness. It is true that as I lament to you, you always give excuses, that you want to chastise, and this is why you do not come. But I do not believe it. Who knows what evil there is in my soul, and because of it you do not come. Tell me at least, for at any cost, even of giving my life, I will remove it. But without you, I cannot be. Think what you want. In this way I cannot go on, either with you on earth or with you in heaven. And blessed Jesus, interrupting me, told me, calm yourself, calm yourself. I am not far away from you, but I am always with you. You do not always see me, but I am always with you. Even more, I am in your inmost heart in order to rest. And as you look for me and bear my privations with patience, you surround me with flowers to cheer me and make me rest more peacefully. And while he was saying this, it seemed that there were many varieties of flowers around Jesus, which almost concealed him. Then he added, "You don't believe that I keep you deprived of me in order to chastise? Yet it is so. When you least expect it, you will hear of the things that will happen." And while saying this, he showed me in the world wars, revolutions against the church, churches on fire. And this was almost imminent. October 14th, 1911, Volume 10. Everything is in love. How scarce is the number of those who fuse their lives completely in love. My always lovable Jesus made himself seen, wanting to fall asleep inside of me. And I, distracting him, told him, "Jesus, what are you doing? This is not the time for sleep. Times are sad, and much vigil is necessary. What is it? Do you want to make something grave happen today?" And Jesus, "Let me sleep, for I feel all the need of it. And you, rest together with me." And I, "No, Lord, you suffer very much, and rest is necessary for you. I don't." And he, "Then I sleep, and you hold the weight of the world. You'll see if you can do it." And I, "By myself I will certainly not make it, but together with you, yes. Besides, isn't love more than rest for you? I want to love you so very much, but with your own love, to be able to give you the love of all. With love I will soothe your every pain, and I will make you forget all the sorrows. I will make up for all that the creatures should do. Isn't it true, O Jesus?" And he, "What you say is really true, but love is also just. Oh, how scarce is the number of those who fuse their lives completely in love. I recommend to you, my daughter, make known to everyone you can that everything is in love, the necessity of love, and that all that is not love, be they even holy things, instead of making them walk forward, make them go backward. May your mission be to teach the true life of love, in which there is all that is beautiful of creatures, and all that is most beautiful which they can give me. And I, how much it takes to make them comprehend this. To some it appears strange that everything is in love, and that by loving, love takes on the commitment to make them similar to you, who are all love. But after all, I will do what I can. Then I saw Jesus wanting to withdraw, and I, "Don't leave me. Now that we are conversing about love, you want to withdraw? How is it? You like love so much." but after a little while he disappeared. I add that on the 11th I had said to Jesus, "Either you will keep me on the cross, or I will keep you on the cross." And since Jesus had shown me himself carrying a coffin all black upon his shoulders, and he was all bent over under that coffin, he told me, "This coffin is Italy. I can no longer manage to carry it. I feel crushed under it." And it seemed that, as he rose, the coffin swung, and Italy received a terrible shake. October 14th, 1912, Volume 11. All that Jesus does in his chosen souls is eternal and not subject to death. Finding myself in my usual state, I was lamenting with Jesus about my poor state, saying, "How can I benefit from the many graces that you gave me in the past? You even crucified me with yourself. What's the benefit if now everything is over?" And Jesus, "My daughter, what are you saying? What? Nothing can benefit you? Everything is over? False. You deceive yourself. Nothing is over, and everything benefits you. You must know that everything I do to the chosen souls is sealed with the seal of the Eternal One, and there is no power that can take the work of my grace away from the chosen soul. Therefore, all the operations I have made to your soul exist, have life in you, and give you continuous food. Did I crucify you? The crucifixion exists, and it exists for as many times as I crucified you. Many times I delight in working within the souls, and to put things in storage. Then I renew my work without taking away what I have done before. Therefore, how can you say that nothing benefits you and that all is over? Ah, my daughter, the times are so sad that my justice reaches the point of rejecting the chosen souls who would take the lightning upon themselves, preventing it from falling on the world. These are the dearest victims of my heart, and the world forces me to keep them almost inactive. But this is not their lack of activity, since being in my will they do everything, while it seems that they do nothing. Rather, they embrace immensity and eternity, but the world, from its own wickedness, does not enjoy the effects of this. October 14th, 1918, Volume 12. True peace comes from God. The greatest chastisement is the triumph of the evil. Continuing in my usual state, full of bitternesses and privations, as my sweet Jesus came, he told me, "My daughter, governments feel the ground missing under their feet. I will use all means to make them surrender, to make them come back to their senses, and to make them know that only from me can they hope for true peace and lasting peace." So now I humiliate one, now another. Now I make them become friends, now enemies. I will be up to all sorts of things. I will make their arms fall off. I will do unforeseen and unexpected things in order to confuse them and make them comprehend the instability of human things and of themselves, to make them comprehend that God alone is the stable being from whom they can expect every good, and that if they want justice and peace, they must come to the font of true justice and of true peace. Otherwise, they will not be able to do anything. They will continue to struggle. And if it may seem that they will arrange peace, it will not be lasting, and the brawls will start again, more strongly. My daughter, the way things are now, only my omnipotent finger can fix them. At the right time, I will place it, but great trials are needed and will occur in the world. Therefore it takes great patience. Then, with a more moving and sorrowful tone, he added, My daughter, the greatest chastisement is the triumph of the evil. More purges are needed, and through their triumph, the evil will purge my church. Then I will crush them and scatter them like dust in the wind. Therefore do not be troubled at the triumphs that you hear, but cry with me over their sad lot. End of October 14th. Fiat.